Thanks, Brown. Have you, yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen. And we'll get started. So before kind of diving into the demo, I wanted to kind of just go through what AIOPS is and be sure to do a quick review of where AIOPS falls within the Aruba Edge Services Platform or ESP architecture. So you've seen and heard this reference from other speakers today as well. And it's something that's ingrained within everybody within Aruba because it is an overall architecture. When we first brought this out, there was a lot of questions from customers about, what's the product ID? Well, how much does this cost? What? And it's not a product. It's an architecture. So it's an end-to-end solution that built on three main pillars. And within Aruba, we like to say connect, protect, and analyze. So the connectivity pillar or the underlay consists of the wireless, wired, and WLAN components in the network. This is the IP infrastructure that allows devices to communicate, with each other from end to end on the network. Then we have the policy pillar. This is the overlay and consists of unified policy, which part of that is what Jesse talked about earlier, ClearPass, right? And zero trust that works on any IP-based transport and is automated within Central. It can automatically bring up the tunnels to remote sites. It can bring up tunnels between APs and gateways, as well as tunnels from switch to gateways when we're using our dynamic segmentation capability. Then we have the services pillar. This is Aruba Central. This consists of tools needed for onboarding, provisioning, orchestration, analytics of devices and the network, locations and management. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the analytics part of this and what we refer to as AIOPS, specifically part of the services pillar. So let's look at what AIOPS is and isn't. First off, AIOPS, it doesn't replace your management solution. It augments it. To that end, Aruba AIOPS sits within Aruba's cloud-based management platform, Central, as I mentioned. AIOPS is then another tool within the cloud-based network management platform. So it's just another tool that goes on the IT engineer's tool belt to help manage and troubleshoot the network. Traditional management features such as configuration, troubleshooting, and reporting are still there as well, all part of any good solid IT environment within the network. AIOPS brings to the tool belt a wealth of telemetry data that can be used to find ongoing problems and patterns to outline potential problems. On top of that, Aruba AIOPS within Central provides peer comparisons. So being cloud-based, we anonymize all this information and are able to compare like customers to like customers, or better phrase, like networks to like networks, right? And so from an education to K-12 perspective, it understands the network that it sees, the data that it sees, and is able to compare those and create kind of the solid baseline information to identify where it might identify an issue or a potential issue that says, hey, this we've seen this issue and it was fixed by making these configuration changes. So AIOPS can provide that level of kind of baseline information. So now that we've kind of outlined where AIOPS sits within the ESP architecture and what it is and what it isn't, let's take a quick look at the components of AIOPS within Aruba Central. So first off, we've got AI insights, and this includes anomaly detection, root cause analysis. It's not just for any good troubleshooting scenario and outcome. You don't want to just treat the symptoms of what's going on. You need to understand what actually happened and what caused those symptoms. And so getting to the root cause is very key to troubleshooting. It helps with proactive performance optimization and recommendations. And we have AI search using natural language processing based queries. And I'll show you that kind of here in a second in the demo when I break out into our demo system. But to query to get points of interest within the fewest mouse clicks as possible. You don't want to have to be jumping from slide to slide, from section to section, and ultimately from tool to tool, right? That's what brings cloud technology and makes it so valuable, is everything's in one place. Then we've got AI Assist, and that's used to automatically collect logs, do packet captures if needed, and open trouble tickets, and it can automatically, with advanced licensing, you can have Aruba Central and AIOPS automatically generate TAC tickets for you. So let's kind of look at what reactive versus proactive as they relate to managing today's networks, right? From a survey done in 2021, Aruba identified that roughly half of an IT person's time is spent on reactive tasks. And you think about what that means. If half of my time is spent, I show up to work, I have plans to work on these business initiatives that have been, provided and driven down from management. Suddenly, I've got to react to an issue that takes place. And if 50% of my time is on reacting to those, that means I only have 50% of my time left to actually be working on business initiatives or increasing my learning or increasing my understanding of the network. So these reactive tasks generally break down into two categories. First is a failure. When something just doesn't work, right? There's some examples might be an endpoint client can't connect, or services are not reachable, AAA, DHCP, DNS, I'm not getting a DHCP address, or an application is not just flat out doesn't work at all. A second would be poor user experience. So when things work, but they just don't quite work the way that they're intended. This might manifest itself in web pages taking 15 seconds or so to load, as an example, or collaboration apps dropping and reconnecting, or audio video becoming very choppy, things like that, right? In a call while you're roaming and losing a few seconds of audio. Now let's kind of look at the proactive side of things as it relates to good AIOPS solutions. While AIOPS is used to reduce the time it takes to resolve issues, it's better to reduce or maybe even eliminate help desk calls at all, right, if possible. So a good AIOPS system should help an IT staff by predicting failures before they happen. And here's kind of a few examples of what Aruba AIOPS, what I'm talking about. Detecting suboptimal firmware. Maybe there's some security vulnerabilities or fixes or new features that have come out. AIOPS can identify that and tell you, hey, the switches over in this location are still running, this version of code, and when everything else is running this, the newer version, can help you identify that. A fan in a switch is underperforming. There's a temperature spike, and suddenly, because there's more power consumption, maybe even a failure, right? You want to try to catch that beforehand. You want to be able to try to identify, hey, I'm starting to see regular issues with this power supply in this switch. Let me replace that before it becomes an actual problem. AP is not connected to a switch to perform optimal coverage. This is a kind of a big one when you look at specifically dealing with stacks of switches in a closet. Right? If I've got all my APs connected to a single switch, what happens if that's the switch in the stack that fails? Now I don't have access points. So it can identify that and help out and say, look, you're going to have better resiliency if you space your APs between the switch ports within this stack. AIOPS it's not only used for finding and predicting problems, but it's an excellent at helping make a good experience great through providing optimization guidance based on measured best performance. For example, transmit power optimization. Maybe in certain areas within the network, I need to look at either increasing or reducing my transmit power. Transient client pruning. I don't, especially as a school district, I don't want people that are just passing by the schoolyard or the offices out on the street or the sidewalk. I don't want their devices impacting my network. Now, a really nice thing about Aruba's AIOPS solution is that it's built into Aruba Central, and there's no setup. I mean, there's nothing you have to do if you wanted to utilize AIOPS. It's built within the system, and this is what it looks like, and we'll see it kind of in the demo here shortly. But you've got insight summary displays that tell you possible reasons, and you've got impact cards that you can drill down to get to specific site information or server or devices or things like that. AI Insights is designed to work with the full portfolio of Aruba products, including our access points, our CX switch line, our Aruba OS switches, and even our gateways. If users are experiencing connectivity issues where the impact deviates from normal or exceeds what's considered acceptable across peer environments, again, going back to what I talked about in how with being cloud-based, our data lake, the size of that based on the number of customers we've got, and being able for the tool being able to create those baselines and look at networks to identify what works and what doesn't. AIOPS can make recommended fixes and help identify. So let me kind of jump out. I'm going to break out of the slide presentation now and switch over to this is one of the demo systems that I have access to, and I've got a very sensitive mouse, and sometimes it does this. There we go. So from within Central, AIOPS manifests itself in a couple of different places. First, let's kind of look at Wi-Fi connectivity. Right, this is going to show, and you can see that I'm at the global level. So I'm looking at my entire network. If I wanted to, I could certainly go into look at specific sites or even specific groups, but looking at from a global perspective, when I look at Wi-Fi connectivity, excuse me, this AI Insight capability here is going to provide information about the wireless experience, the association, authentication, DHCP, and DNS, right? It's going to tell me very quickly what's going on. I can see here within this system that authentication seems to be having some issues. So I can click on that to get more specifics. I also have, it's identified some kind of summary level AI insights on connectivity that I should look at. And then there are some DNS issues, but let's specifically look at authentication, what's going on. Clients have excessive 802.1x failures. What's going on with that? I can get in it, I can set the date. This is within the last 3 hours, or I want to see within the last day, last 24 hours. I can see something else actually showed up within the last 24 hours as well. There were security key exchange issues that were going on. So you can see that there's stuff going on with the network. If I want to look and get more information about, well, what's possibly happening here, this drills down into, now I've jumped over into the AI insights. This is really the meat and potatoes of AIOPS, in that this is where you'll see the description of what's going on, what's being impacted, and here's some suggestions on what to do. Check the authentication server's log to validate, is the radius request even getting to my authentication server? Maybe that's the issue, right? Take a look at that. Or check the user's provision status and validate the password. This could be simply something that, maybe they're entering the wrong password. But again, this tells me what site's having that issue, what specific servers having this issue, the access points that the users connect to, and in this case, the particular client. So if I wanted to, I could click on, and I can see that this client's having this particular issue. So that's kind of that's the Wi-Fi connectivity. That's, again, depending on if I'm at global or site level, what's the wireless connectivity, the wireless network environment look like. But let's kind of switch now into the AI assist aspect of this. And again, as I mentioned, there's kind of reactive use cases and proactive. We'll go through some kind of reactive. I'm an admin within the school district. I want to kind of understand, I get in the morning and I want to look at, say, user experience issues, right? This ties into that natural language processing. Simply type that in my AI search bar at the top here, and it's gonna give me some information. It's identified there's these 4 clients that are currently experiencing issues, and it also gives me some other information that I can look at that kind of might lend itself to user experience. Well, let's take a look at Simron. What's going on? If I simply hover over this user, I can go down and I can look at various information that relates to this user. I can look at events to see what's going on. If I click on that, that takes me into the user. And here's his information. Now, this is going to take a little time to look because there's several thousand pieces of information. Again, it's a demo system that we have access to. Its main purpose is for demos only. So again, but it identifies, sorry, there's my sensitive mouse again. It identifies information and events, whether negative, neutral, what's going on with this particular user. Again, I can set this for, well, let's see in the last 3 hours what's taken place. That's when he seemed to have the most issues. I can see what's kind of going on. There's the disassociation from the client. There's an eat timeout, right? So this is kind of like maybe he's just moving around the campus and not really stationary in one point to have made a connection, right? So there's radius timeouts, things like that. So again, I'm seeing very specific information for this user, what's going on, what SSID is connected to, what band, all the, what's the channel width, what's going on. Now, if I want to go back and, okay, that's kind of cool, but what happens if I know, Simron actually was to call the help desk? Well, if I want to troubleshoot him, all I've got to do is type in his name, and boom, it comes up. Okay, here's Simron. Now, this is when you do a search, it's going to return anything and everything that relates to what I search. So if I, for example, had a site that was called Simron, it would actually have information. It would actually have that site listed here as well, because it's just returning things on Simron. So in this case, it happens to be a user. Well, let's actually click on locate and see where this user is. See what's going on. It ties into. It can show me. He's in this. The LAN demo location on floor 1 over in this part of the building, right? So that you get that level of information. Let's look at, let's go back to here, and maybe I'm looking at, under AI Insights, maybe I'm looking at, let's pick another one here. Let's go excessive port flaps. I've got a switch that's reporting excessive port flaps. Well, what does that mean? What potential issues could that be, right? Well, it's telling me run a cable diagnostic to determine, maybe I've got a faulty transceiver. Maybe something's happened to the cable, or ignore, because this is, in this case, it's expected because it's an administrator that's taking this port up and down for whatever reason. Also, maybe check, their remote monitoring on the switch using CLI Connect. But again, it breaks this down. It's telling me what switch. It's even going to tell me what port. So if I click on these ports, I can get even more specific information about what's going on, the number of flaps and things like that. So that's looking at, again, reactive kind of information. And let me to go into some other level of information. Let me kind of switch into a different version of our demo system here real quick. Switch accounts. Go into our AI Insights demo system. And again, being demo systems, the reason I'm switching back and forth like this is just simply because of being able to maintain and have access to this information. If I was to use my home central account, I may not have some of these issues pop up for a demo purpose. So I'm guaranteed when I do a demo with a customer that these issues are always in here, because it's set up that way as a demo system. But let's take a look at maybe kind of how this can be proactive. Well, I want to know, are outdoor clients impacting my Wi-Fi? Let's take a look at that and see, what can I do to help with this? Well, it gives me suggestions, right? AIOPS, you want something that's automated, you want something that is useful to help with efficiency. This is telling me what to do. And it change the probe and authentication thresholds, outdoor clients, changing things like that. I can actually tell it, now because it's a demo system, I don't have this enabled, but I can actually tell it to update and make those changes for me automatically, right? So that goes to the efficiency. What about if I have, looking at, do I have maybe coverage holes in my network, something like that? I'd want to look at that. That's in there somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out when it's at there. Well, let's do a quick search. There it is, coverage holes. AP, add AP. So it's identified because there's low SNR in this area. And again, at this site, between all these access points, we've got a lot of clients that are being impacted. What's going on? These clients, you're going to see they're going through disassociations and reconnecting, things like that. Well, why? Well, it's identified a potential coverage hole. Being proactive, now I know at this specific site, I need to go in and add 10 APs is just not enough to cover this site. So that's kind of the proactive nature of the tool. And what I want to show from a demo perspective, let's kind of wrap this portion up. Let me go back into the presentation and get into the next feature and the latest feature within Aruba Central that relates to AIOPS, and that is client insights. So if you're familiar with ClearPass and its profiling capabilities, right? That's profiling what's on the network. Because we've identified, when I say we, Aruba has identified that, most customers truly don't know what's on the network. They think they do, but they truly don't. So tools like ClearPass with its profile can help with that. But we're now bringing this into Central as part of AIOPS. And again, there's no charge for this. This is not something that if I want this, there's any, no subscription update that I need to worry about. But this is simply the sophisticated AI-powered client identification and profiling capabilities that are built in. Benefits of client insights, accurate AI machine learning profiling within 99% accuracy. There's no physical collector or virtual-based agents that are required for this. This is all being done automatically for free as part of Aruba Central, collecting telemetry from the Aruba hardware that's being utilized in the network. This not only makes it cost-effective, but also very simple to to deploy and start using. This collectorless deployment is what differentiates Aruba from our competitors. Customers using client insights are immediately experiencing IT efficiency gains due to the increased visibility and availability of insights as to what's on your network. And from there, you can make policy, right, that interacts with ClearPath to say, hey, I have these IT or these surveillance cameras, and their traffic should, is always talking back to their server. Suddenly, I start to see one or two of these things phoning home back to China or somewhere. That's not normal. That's abnormal. I need to apply policy, and I need ClearPath's help to use a change of authorization to quarantine or suddenly take those guys off the network, right, so that we can investigate what's going on.
David,
yes.
I just wanted to share with you really quick. We are at 11:35, and I let the audience know that we may be running about 15 minutes later, and that I will share this video with them, but I just wanted to mention that to you. The time is at 11:35, okay?
Okay, perfect. Let's just I'll just move on through here, to wrap up the AIOPS aspect, and then I'll jump into my last two subjects. But Aruba Central AIOPS delivers the visibility and automation needed to manage your networks, the mobile always-on network. The question isn't really why AIOPS as much as when. As part of Aruba Central, AIOPS works to provide proactive operation support, reduce performance incidents which then provides efficiency guides to IT departments that can be measured. Aruba is committed to improving how our customers' networks work, while also building in the intelligence needed to ensure how and what to make better. So again, thanks for sitting through this. Let me jump into my next presentation. And this is going to go into, we'll start off with AOS10. And again, I'll just go through this quick, but because we see this on every slide, every presentation, but it's just a quick review of the Edge Services platform and how it's an end-to-end solution architect built on, pillars. Although Aruba's wireless networking solutions have always been innovative and industry leading, there were nonetheless challenges. For example, there were different solutions for campus and branches, right? Going back to our version 6 and version 8, and we've got controllerless and controller-based, and so there are different solutions there. We've got different wired and wireless solutions with different code versions and things like that. From an access point perspective, there are even differences as they related to controller-based versus controllerless or even remote, right? The conversion capabilities were there in some circumstances, but not all. Expenditures, we want to help customers leverage their expenditure, but there are times when we can't do the conversion. So the different solutions required, different ways to configure and manage the network. In particular, there was no support for cloud-based management with the controller-based architecture. With these challenges in mind, Aruba went back to the drawing board and worked to re-architect the solution to be more uniform. This led to the latest release, AOS10. Under AOS10, Aruba provides the ability to leverage and integrate your initiatives into a single overall architecture. You see, IAP is no longer separate. It's now just part of AOS10. WLAN capabilities, tunnel orchestration, things like that, air match products, those are all just brought in. The new AOS10 architecture consists of 2 layers. There's the cloud management layer, which is Central. Central is required to move to AOS10, and then the infrastructure layer. The cloud management layer, this is Aruba Central, as I mentioned. It handles management services as well as control services. So if you're an existing Aruba wireless customer using AOS 8 as an example, you're familiar with the mobility conductor and how that migrated out of AOS 6. We abstracted management from the controller into the mobility conductor. Well, we're doing that once again and abstracting these services out of the gateway and into Central. Right? So we've got then the infrastructure layer. And this is all about the hardware. This is access points, gateways, and we can cluster those, as well as switches. Under AOS10, gateways now become just another network device in the overall architecture. That's really all they're there to do is handle tunnels. Next, I'll look at the deployment options under AOS10. So in AOS10, there's 3 deployment options. We can deploy with APs only, kind of if you think back to Aruba Instant. Well, the difference is that there's no gateway, there's no virtual gateway, no virtual controller, right, as managed. All that is now, again, abstracted into central in the cloud. So the APs are essentially standalone, and we're bridging all the user traffic at the access point and go from there. The next deployment option is we can, if you do certainly need to look at adding gateways, we can certainly do that. And I can kind of go through why we might add gateways here in a second. But we've got the ability to bring in the traditional gateway access point architecture as well. And we, again, the gateway is there to purely handle user tunnels or tunnels from switches for users. No config management or roaming management. That's all now handled within Central. And we've got micro branch. It's kind of rebranded as remote AP. But it does require a gateway because we need that VPNC functionality. We need the access point to be able to create that IPsec tunnel back into the data center. Now, when might you need gateways? Scale might be the one. So a single roaming domain. We can have up to 500 APs and 5,000 clients, and the clients is really more important between those two. It's security and policy. Maybe there's a requirement to tunnel with some wireless LANs. I want my guest traffic. I don't want it to ever touch the network. I need it to be tunneled back to my gateway before it's dumped on the network. Or segmentation, again, talking about guest violence. Maybe there's a requirement to encrypt over the LAN. Okay, now I'm talking about maybe user-based tunneling. From the switches, I need tunnels to traffic to be tunneled back to the gateway for uniform policy and things like that. Features, mobility, dynamic radius proxy. Under an AP-only architecture, every single access point needs to be identified within, as a NAS. We add the gateway, I can now simplify that and say, look, my gateway is the NAS into ClearPass. And I don't have to, add hundreds of NAS devices. Another differentiator of AOS10 is that you can start out with the access point only design as a network, and as requirements change, you just simply add the gateways. And today, with AOS10, that's important to understand that I'm simply adding the gateway. I don't have to add licenses. Under AOS8 or AOS6 even, if I wanted to add gateways, move from instant to a gateway architecture, I've got to add the gateways. But now I've suddenly also got to add licenses for every single access point that's in my network. Under AOS10, I no longer have to worry about that. So next, I'll wrap up this kind of high-level overview of AOS10 and look at the SSID modes, right? Because it's important to understand there's a really cool feature within AOS10 when it relates to how I can configure that. I've got bridge mode SSIDs. Again, all user traffic is bridged from the AP and put on the wire right there. Crypto and NAS, as I mentioned, all user VLANs need to be on the switch. I've got tunnel mode SSID. So these two modes, you're probably most familiar with these, right? These exist today and they're very common. With tunnel mode SSID, I can, I'm tunneling my traffic back to the gateway, for policy or for whatever reason for firewall, and VLANs are maintained on the gateway and not the switch. So those exist today. But if I wanted an environment where I've got some bridge and some tunnel mode, I have to have 2 separate SSIDs. Well, under AOS10, I no longer have to worry about that. I can put these in what we call a mixed mode SSID. And based on the user role or VLAN passed back from ClearPass or Radius, whatever, I put that into a VLAN, and based on the VLAN, I'm either bridged or I'm tunneled. So that's a pretty cool feature that I really like to outline when it comes to AOS10 and why, so you can see from an efficiency standpoint, you can see we've now brought everything into this single unified architecture, and everything, it just doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about, well, what version of access point is this, and can I use it in this design, deployment option, and not, well, no, now I've got to refresh. These all fit within AOS10. That's That's AOS10, and I do have one last thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's our new initiative called Open Locate, which has to do with indoor location services. So challenges with today's indoor location services. Despite major advancements in Wi-Fi ranging technologies, indoor reference points remain the weakest link. Location is still based on XY coordinates from inaccurate 2D floor plans, as the source of truth. The floor plans that IT departments have, they're really not location grade, they're IT grade for asset, management and things like that. This type of process is very manually intensive. Understanding, adding the maps, if you're even doing that, and then placing, manually placing the APs within your maps to be used. Another challenge with indoor location today is that, most APs just don't support the latest ranging technologies to help automate the process. So ranging historically has been based on signal strength, which is also, does not provide reliable accuracy due to inherent issues with the signal strength as a ranging source. So said another way, location services requires an absolute reference point. As alluded to earlier, in terms of most APs not being mapped, Aruba's found that at best, maybe 1 in 5 APs within a customer network is mapped on any kind of management platform. That means that upwards of 80% of deployed APs are not mapped. And a lot of that, the reasoning for that is just the complexity, the time-consuming aspects, and the inaccuracy of that. So for indoor location services, this is the first major hurdle that needs to be addressed. Mapping as a source of truth is best effort at best. From a user experience perspective, indoor location often means having to utilize multiple applications just to help get from point A to point Z. Because once you get inside that building, and now I can no longer use, say, Google Maps. Now I've got to switch to something that maybe the venue or maybe my company has, right? So I'm constantly changing platforms. Today's indoor location capabilities they're not portable, and they don't integrate with the most common platforms such as Google Maps or Apple Maps. So again, leading to having to utilize multiple tools. Aruba addresses these challenges in an initiative that we call Open Locate. This initiative will help provide the world's first self-locating wireless network. Open Locate combines GPS technology and fine time measurement protocol, right? That's the IEEE certified 802.11mc standard. So from a GPS aspect of Open Locate, all of Aruba Wi-Fi 6E access points, the 600 series, have a built-in GPS receiver. Now that then can be used as your anchor, your source of truth, because now that access point, the accuracy of that, goes from what we've seen maybe 5 to 10 meters down to maybe 1 meter to 2 meters, something like that. So the accuracy is greatly improved, and that becomes now your source of truth. Aruba is also the first Wi-Fi vendor to implement Wi-Fi certified location. This is the FTM, the Fine Time Management Protocol, which is IEEE certified and open standard. FTM essentially uses timing rather than signal strength, round trip time to be precise, rather than signal strength to identify location. FTM is built into all of Aruba Wi-Fi 6, so that's our 500 series, and 6E, the 600 series access points. With Open Locate, that's going to allow, as I talked about, GPS-based access points. So your 600 series access points, you're going to want to use those as your source of truth within your network. They use GPS to identify where they're at. They can then provide spatial information to the 500 series APs using FTM. From an endpoint, a device perspective, there are some devices today that do support FTM. Android and some Windows, mobile devices can take advantage of Open Locate today. But for those that don't support a FTM, like iOS, or don't have Wi-Fi, there's some BLE only type devices out there. Aruba decided, we're going to broadcast this location information in standard 802.11 and BLE beacons. We're not going to charge for this. This is, we don't believe in once we find something like, we're not going to charge our customers for this capability. It's something that, because we're trying to put Open Locate and make it, a global standard. Essentially it's transmitting the location information of the access points that will allow APs to locate themselves within simple degree of precision. Again, quickly, just a quick overview. As I talked about, the 600 series has the GPS receiver built in. those can be used as your anchor, your source of truth in open locate design. And then the 500 series using find time, protocols. So let's kind of wrap up. And I know I'm getting close to, it's always nice being the last speaker right before lunch or before the end of the day, right? I'm holding you guys back from lunch. Luckily, I'm not at least holding you back from, beer 30 somewhere. But to wrap up this section, I wanted to leave you with some key takeaways around Aruba's Open Locate initiative. As a part of our overall location services solution. Benefits to customers of indoor location services and network administrators. Mapping of access points will no longer require timely and costly surveys. And it's just going to increase the accuracy. That's even more important, right? And updates are going to be automatic to end users or app developers or service providers. Experience both, indoor and outdoor location become more seamless. Map data will be up to date, including integration with existing mapping applications like I talked about, Google or Apple Maps. Now, I may be able to use that tool once I even go inside the building now with this and not have to switch between tools. Simply put, they should be able to take location for granted, users that is, right? I shouldn't have to worry about what tool do I need to use to help identify where I'm at. And last, lines of business. Adopting new location-based services becomes easier and less time-consuming to deploy because data becomes more meaningful, which adds to the overall user network experience. Again, it's all about efficiency, improving the user experience. That's what Open Locate is, and hopefully, it touched a nerve that you want to learn a little bit more about that. It's still new to me, to be honest. I'm still learning about it as well because it is a new initiative. But it's very exciting, the capability, like I talked about, to be a self-locating network. Thanks again for your time today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Back to you, Brianna.
Thank you very much, David. That was a very well in-depth piece of information. Yeah, but you did a really good job. We had 3 different subjects. So it's just hard, and this is our first one that we've done in a long time. So we thank you for your patience as we try to figure out how to streamline this. We might not do as many subjects next time, but I think that all the subjects that were presented today were valuable. I hope that you felt the same way. I want to share a big thank you to all of our panelists because they took the time to prepare specific information just for you during this event. We are grateful for the interest that was shown. We had over 75 registries and we're excited. As our first event, we didn't know how it would go, and so we are excited that you are excited. We plan to host a K-12 event every quarter highlighting solutions. We may spend more time on the solutions now that you've kind of seen a little bit about each one, and then we might make it like an hour next time and so forth. But we want to keep in a good routine of getting in front of our customers, getting in front of our prospects, and sharing our solution overviews, giving you a good idea as to why Aruba is a best in breed solution, and why Gartner has rated us #1 in all 6 categories for 2019 and 20, and we got close in 2021. So thank you for supporting our hard work. We appreciate you, and more to come.